Welcome for our first day, second day of the festival, the first day of some of the festival with the yoga. How many of you were here for Yoga Charu's class? Very nice. Nice way to start the morning. This is how civilized people, used to live. And we can still choose to live this way. You get up, you take a bath, you come and you sit in a clean place, you do some breathing, maybe do some asana, meditate a bit, chant a mantra, bring your mind to it. And when the mind is settled a bit, then you open up a text like Bhagavad Gita, and you have this incredible opportunity, this incredible access to hear insights from the greatest of sages that are like a manual for how to live in this universe, and that go right to the mind and right to the heart, helping us just understand how to move through this world, how to move through it gracefully, how to move through it with wisdom, how not to be controlled by external influences, but to actually gain control of the mind, gain control of the body, and direct our path through this cosmos to higher and higher and higher states of awareness and happiness. This is what people used to do. They would make this a priority in their life. They would focus on it in the morning, they'd focus on it in midday, they'd focus on it again in the evening. And by doing this regularly, by practicing this regularly, they could find that throughout the whole 24 hours of the day, they could have their mind on this very elevated state of awareness. And they describe it as being able to see God everywhere and see everything in God. Right? God in everything and everything in God. They could see this, they could perceive this, they could understand this. Bhagavad Gita, if you really read this book and you really get inside it, you find that this is what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do all the time. See me in everything and see everything in me. And it sounds a bit paradoxical, right? How can something that's in something also have that thing inside it? Krishna can do this. Vishnu can do this. This is possible. And when you perceive this, you're never alone, you're never bewildered, you're never confused, you're never disturbed. You actually attain your true consciousness, your true awareness. This is what the yogis are focused on. So we have 5 weeks together. And please take advantage of all of this as much as you can. The yoga and the meditation Yogi Tru's doing, our studies of these sacred texts that we'll be doing after that every morning. And the other courses, classes, and especially the kirtans, which we have during the day and in the evening, just amazing kirtans. And the prasadam that happens out here, and every evening we're also doing questions and answers. And Yogi Churu will also be out in our booth in some evenings, going deeper into what he calls mental hygiene. Right? That we all take care of, well, hopefully we take care of our teeth, we take care of our body, keep it clean, keep it pure. We know that if we neglect that it results in different types of pain and misery. Similarly, if we neglect to take care of the mind, if we have no mental hygiene program, how can we expect to live a good life? How can we expect to live a happy life? So he'll be speaking on those topics as well. So there'll be so much. I had such a wonderful time here last year, so I'm really looking forward to spending this time with you all. And so why don't we begin by I'll chant a few mantras. In the following days, we'll have a video screen here where we can put these mantras up there and you can all chant along. But for now, if you know this, you can please feel free to chant along with me. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And before I begin to speak, and this is very important, but I would like to very humbly beg for the blessings of my senior Vaishnavas here, especially Srila Indradyumna Swami and Badahari Prabhu, and others as well. Please bless me that I might be able to represent the lineage of great sages in our Guru Parampara, and hopefully be a good representative of this beautiful tradition. Thank you for being here. Also, before I speak, I just always like to share a few things. One is that I like to make friends this way. Over the years, I've made a lot of lifelong friends just in gatherings like this. So please consider me your friend, and please feel free to follow up with me. You know, we can be friends on social media, but we can also be friends in person. I'll be here for a while, and you know, we have time. We can have some time to connect, especially in the evenings in the Q&A booth if you'd like to come. So if I can serve you, I'm happy to try to serve you. Also, I want to say that I feel my role here is not necessarily to convince you of anything. It's really just to try to accurately present the teachings of a tradition, teachings of the yoga tradition, the teachings of the bhakti tradition. And then you receive them, and just as Krishna said to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, please hear them, please deliberate on them, and then you choose what you would like to do with them. But that being said, sometimes I may speak as if these things, for instance, I may speak about reincarnation as if it's a fact. I'm not trying to impose that idea, but I'm just trying to represent the tradition. And so please take that into account and understand it in that way. And there's one more thing that I want to share. This, I think is really something important. And that is that we read these ancient texts. Sometimes we hear stories of the great sages and the great yogis, mystics. We can read about them in books like Mahabharata, Ramayana, in the Puranas. And it may seem like the states of awareness, the enlightenment, you could say, that they've achieved, it may seem like that's something that was meant for certain people a long, long time ago that wandered up into these mountains and walked away from the world, and something that's maybe out of reach for us, something that we may not be able to obtain. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna felt this way for a moment. When Krishna in the 6th chapter describes the level of awareness actually the difficulty, the challenge in the practice of doing Ashtanga yoga, Arjuna hears it and he says, I don't think I can do this, because the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. And for a moment there, he feels a bit lost. What will I do? I can't be a yogi. And Krishna assures him, no, you can be a yogi. It just takes the suitable practice and detachment. But you can be a yogi. There's a way for you to be a yogi, and you can achieve all the highest goals of a yogi. And he was saying it to Arjuna, but through saying it to Arjuna, he was saying it to all of us. And even though we live in a very crazy world, even though we live in a world that's just bombarding us with all kinds of absurd distractions, if we make it our priority in life, if we choose that this is what I want, that this is my highest goal, to achieve this higher state of awareness, to achieve this divine love, then we can be blessed to receive it. And I say this with confidence because I know people who have done it. Right? People that grew up just like all of us have grown up. They've achieved these states of awareness. They've achieved these goals. We just have to make it our priority. Do you believe me?
Yes.
Yes, for sure?
Yes.
Do you doubt it a little bit?
No.
You think, okay, but still, maybe not me? Anyone, actually. Anyone. It's said that especially in this age, in this Kali Yuga, in this most difficult time, there's a certain blessing that even the people that are the least qualified can be blessed with the highest gifts. And so we will pursue those gifts together now. Are you ready? I wanted to read one more thing before we start, okay? Is that all right? I wanted to read a few verses from the Bhagavad Gita that speak to that level of awareness. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, texts 20 through 23. Here, Krishna is describing the state called samadhi. He describes how a yogi can achieve this by doing Ashtanga yoga. But here, it's not just to achieve a state of peace, because he goes on to describe how one sees him within the heart and then sees him everywhere. But right here, he talks about a state of consciousness that one can achieve. And I want you to hear it. And the context that I want you to hear it in is that this is why people practiced yoga. There's so many benefits that one can gain from practicing yoga. And people approach it for different reasons. And particularly by the time that the tradition gets carried to the Western world, the reasons why people take it up are sometimes it's not that they're not good reasons. For instance, health is an important thing. Fitness is an important thing. Peace of mind is an important thing. But the yogis were really searching for something deeper. They're deeper, more valuable treasures to be gained through the practice of yoga. And I just want to read this to give a hint. This doesn't even talk about the highest, but it talks about some pretty high-level stuff. Okay? Are you ready to hear that? Everybody?
Yes.
Okay. In this stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. Okay, so that's speaking in contrast. We generally try to relish external things, external objects, but this yogi is relishing internally, is relishing their own eternal spiritual nature. It continues. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, they think there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Okay? Never departing from the truth, never becoming confused, feeling that this is the greatest thing to possibly gain. There's nothing higher to gain, right? Being unshaken under any external circumstances that this world may throw our way. Yoga can offer all this and still more. And I say that I know people have achieved this state, and maybe I'll share a story or two before we end today. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. But let's start with an analogy that the sages have shared for ages. And this analogy is a nature analogy. A lot of the analogies that the yogis used were nature analogies because they lived in these forests here, in these mountains. They lived in nature. And there's a benefit to living in nature that we lose a lot of touch with. We live in houses and apartments that are kind of, we've designed them to protect us from nature, but we get isolated from nature. You know, we work in cubicles with, what do they call it, fluorescent lighting, and or in all kinds of unnatural circumstances. I live in New York City. When you look up into the sky at night in New York City, you can't see any stars because there's just so much artificial light. Imagine that. Very strange, isn't it? Very unusual. Stars, to look up and see the stars is the most natural thing in the world. And somehow we've, searching for other types of lifestyles, we lose touch with some of these just most important fundamental things. You know, you grow up in nature, you're familiar with the movements of the moon, right? The phases of the moon, right? When you talk to a Western person living in a big city, if you say, what's the phase of the moon right now? They have no idea, right? Because they never look up and see it, right? You go to the river, right? New York City, you go to the river, you can't go inside that river. You can't bathe in that river, right? Nobody does, right? There's a big highway running along that river. You can't go there and find peace of mind, right? We lose touch with all these natural gifts. And if you spend time in nature, even if you try to do a little something like a little gardening or something, right? How many of you like gardening? Raise your hand. Okay, just a few, right? I don't garden, so I can't, I can't judge anyone. But just by little gardening or something like that, you begin to look at nature in a new way and you learn lessons. It kind of speaks to you. And so nature spoke to these sages. And today I want to share two nature analogies, two big ones, two potentially life-changing nature analogies that you can walk away with today and keep as treasures for your entire life. Are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start with just one right now. And that is what the sages observed in an animal. And this animal, you see similar animals in the West, but really these are animals that are native to these mountains, called the Himalayan musk deer. How many of you are familiar with this deer? Raise your hand if you are. Okay, it's a deer like they have in the Western world. It looks mostly the same, a little bit smaller. It has two fangs, actually, that are quite, noticeable. But the real special thing about the musk deer is that it has a gland near its navel, and that produces a type of substance that has the most enchanting aroma. Practically the most enchanting aroma that you find on the earth is this musk, right? And they make artificial types of musk now, but that aroma is so special and so rare that it's very expensive, to get. Even, I believe it's illegal now because they were hunting for these deer so much to get this. I've heard, and maybe my friend Yogi Charu can speak to this, I don't know, that the yogis had ways to extract the musk without harming the deer. I've heard that before, and I don't doubt it. Because my friend, I do a podcast with my friend Raghunath called Wisdom of the Sages. And Raghunath has sheep. And there's a way that you can just grab a sheep and lie down, and the sheep is on its back, and it just becomes totally peaceful. I don't know, it's strange, But when it's in that position, it just becomes relaxed. And perhaps the yogis know how to relax the deer and extract the musk. But nowadays, people don't do that. So they kill the deers, and they're nearly extinct, and now they're protected. But in any case, setting all that aside, this is the important thing about the musk deer. That gland is in the male deer. And in the mating season, that aroma begins to emanate, to emit from the body of the deer. And that aroma is so enchanting. It smells that aroma. And it can't believe how enchanting it is. It begins to search, where's this aroma coming from? It's looking all over, sniffing the ground, sniffing the rocks, sniffing the trees, sniffing other animals. It's sniffing. And it can't figure out where it's coming from. And they say that this deer becomes frantic. It's so confused It begins to run all over the forest, searching and searching and searching for the source of that beautiful aroma. And they say it even begins to run. And it runs till it becomes exhausted and even collapses. Right? Not knowing all along that aroma was coming from within its own self. Now, this is interesting, right? You look at nature, you can learn so many things. Right? You can become wise. And what the yogis said is, we are like these musk deer. We're just like them. Right? Think about this, and think about this very carefully. They're saying that we run around this world. We all live in our own forest, our own jungle, right? I'm from New York City. New York City, they call it the concrete jungle. Right? So many buildings, so many bars, nightclubs, entertainment places, so many apartments, so many offices, so many parks, so many places to go, searching, running through that jungle, right? Running till we become exhausted. Sometimes we run and run and run, and we even collapse, not knowing all along that the thing that we're searching for is inside our own selves. And what is that we're searching for? We're searching for happiness, right? We're just searching for happiness through our job, through our occupation, through our relationships, through the places that we go. We're searching for happiness. We're searching for it externally. We're searching for it through external objects, external circumstances, convinced that we're going to find it outside, right? Just like that deer, he's convinced that aroma is from outside, right? Running and running and collapsing, not realizing that it's actually inside. The yogis are saying that happiness, the happiness that we're looking for, the real happiness, not the temporary, fleeting kind of thrill or comfort or pleasure that comes one moment and then it's gone the next. That's not what they're talking about. They're saying that there's a happiness within that is the true nature of the self. And if you can find it within, you'll always have it. The external things, the nature of the external energy is that it's always changing. And the nature of the internal energy is that it's changeless. It never changes. And so if we can find this happiness, our true nature, they call this, the sages call this self-realization, right? Realizing the nature of the self. Who am I, really? Am I this body? Am I this mind? Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I black? Am I white? Am I Indian? Am I American? What am I, right? What is the self? Self-realization. This is what the yogis are searching for. This is why they would come up to these mountains, find some peaceful place, sit down, practice asana, practice meditation, go within to find this happiness. Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy? Yes. It's a bit striking, isn't it? Because if we looked at that deer and said, oh, the poor thing, look, it's so foolish. It's running around like crazy, not realizing it's right inside its own self. But are we doing that, right? Think about our lives. Think about the happiness that we've had and then lost, the joys that we've had and then lost, right? And then we suffer. So let's start there with this understanding that yoga has to do with looking within and trying to realize the self. And in pursuit of this, I want to share a definition of yoga. There are many ways that yoga is defined. If you read the ancient, Patanjali defines yoga in a particular way. Bhagavad Gita defines yoga in certain ways. This is a definition that kind of encompasses all of that. It's a definition that throughout the next 5 weeks I'm going to keep coming back to because everything ties into this definition that we're going to share right now. And I encourage people to memorize it too. I don't have a board right here to write it down, but I'll share it on the video screen when we get that probably tomorrow. But I'll say it right now, and you can maybe repeat it after. Let me just say it first, okay? You ready? Want to take this in? I encourage people to commit this to memory. Because I find that it becomes like you could say a lens that we look through, or like a key to understanding what yoga really is. Sometimes people say, my golf game is my yoga, right? And we can say, well, maybe not. But how will we know if we don't really know what yoga is? So here's a definition for yoga. Ready? Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature. Okay, shall I repeat that? Yes. More slowly, okay. Yoga. Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature. Would you like to repeat it after me? Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature. This is why people practice yoga. This is the real reason why yoga is practiced. This is the tradition, right? Now, Patanjali, how many of you have read Yoga Sutras before? Raise your hand high so I can see. Some of it, yes, at least some. You know, generally, you start at the beginning, and this comes right at the beginning. It's actually the second and third sutras. Patanjali gives a definition of yoga. He says, Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. You've heard that before? Right? Many have heard that before. And then the next sutra says, then the drista, the seer. Right? And when he says seer, he could have just as easily said atma, jiva. He could have even said the hearer, the taster, right? He's saying it's not the eyes that see. The eyes are just, you could say they're like a lens or a camera. It's the self that sees, the soul that sees, the seer. It's actually, within the body, there's the soul that actually sees. It sees through the lens of the eyes. But he says, then when the mind is settled, when the mind's no longer fluctuating, when it's held still, then the seer, the soul, the self, abides in their own true nature. Right? So he's saying, you have a true nature. You're probably out of touch with it. I can help you get in touch with it through a practice by which we still the mind. And when you master this and the mind is held perfectly still for long periods of time, you can enter into a state called samadhi, wherein you feel your own nature. You feel that happiness that is your nature. And when you feel that, all of the programming in our mind, it becomes revealed for being entirely superficial, entirely unimportant. Here 1 minute, gone the next, poof, like a dream, it's all gone. I am this, I am that, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm all these things. Poof, that's not me. This is me, I'm feeling it now. Right? Now this is important. Now, Patanjali, he said by stilling the mind, one can achieve this. When I gave my definition, I didn't say by stilling the mind, but I just by overcoming the obstacle of the mind. Because different yoga paths have different approaches for overcoming the obstacle of the mind. One path is called Ashtanga Yoga, sometimes called Raja Yoga, sometimes called Dhyana Yoga, but more or less the same thing. The idea is through this intense self-discipline, one can settle the mind and hold it on one object. It's very challenging. This is when Arjuna heard about this in Bhagavad Gita, he said, I can't do that. I wish I could, but my mind is just too difficult to control. Okay, Krishna says, there are other practices of yoga, other strategies for how to deal with the mind. And so when I say yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind, I'm leaving the definition broad enough to include these other different approaches. Does that make sense? And we'll talk about 4 different prominent, commonly spoken about paths of yoga later on in our course. And we'll examine each strategy and how each one works. So we'll hold that for later. But for now, to begin with, let us examine the nature of the self, right? This definition had 3 different subjects in it, right? Yoga is a practice. So the practice is one subject, which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind. So the mind is the second subject, for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature. So the self and its own true nature is the third subject. And we're going to examine these over the course of many days, beginning with the nature of the self, then speaking about the mind, and then speaking about the practices. And then we're really going to go into the practice of bhakti yoga and go deeper and deeper into that. Is that okay? There's one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning, and that is that when I speak, I like to be relatively informal. We're sitting amongst friends here. And that means I'm happy to hear questions if at any point you feel like there's something you don't fully understand, or something you completely don't understand, or there's some terminology that I'm using that may be unfamiliar, or if you're not following along, happily following along in any way, I want you to please feel free to raise your hand and ask a question. And I'll be checking in with you from time to time, like right now. I'm forgetting your name, sir. Vishal. Vishal, yes, good to see you again. Oh, let us get you the microphone. Here we go.
Can we get the, your definition of, can you please repeat
Yoga? Yes.
yeah.
Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind
Yeah.
for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature.
So can we achieve the, overcoming the obstacle of the mind without stilling the mind? So is it not the same as Patanjali's definition almost?
Yeah, you see, Patanjali's, when he says stilling the mind,
Yeah.
he's not speaking in a general sense. And if you read his Yoga Sutras, you can see in great detail, he speaks about a state of awareness called samadhi. It's more than just, when you really understand it, it's more than just, you could say it's a focused mind. It is, but it's an extremely focused mind. It's the idea that the object that you choose to focus on, to still it, you need to attach it to something. You need to tie it to something. Otherwise, it's going to wander. So you need to pick an object. Patanjali, he's very broad. He's going to say you can choose any object, and you need to focus on it. When you read Bhagavad Gita and they're talking about the same yoga, Krishna is saying that traditionally what the yogis did was they looked for God in the heart. That was the object that they focused on. Patanjali is saying, maybe you're not comfortable with that idea. Okay, you can focus on any object and to still the mind and hold it down. But he describes what the level of the concentration, and it's extreme. And I'll share it with you now. He says that the concentration of the yogi on the object has to be so complete that the only thing in their awareness is the object and nothing else. Have you ever heard the story from Mahabharata where the guru of Arjuna, the military guru of Arjuna, named Dronacharya, he's training all the young warriors. And what he did was he placed like a wooden bird way up high in a tree, right? And he calls each of the boys up, and they have their bow and their arrow. And he says, tell me what you see. And the first boy says, I see the tree, and I see the bird. He said, get out of here, right? And the next person comes up, what do you see? I see the tree, I see the bird. Right? Everybody's saying the same thing. And then Arjuna came up, right? And he said, Arjuna, what do you see? He says, I see the bird. He says, describe the bird. He says, I only see the eye of the bird. And when he said this, it said that Dronacharya, his guru, he said his hair stood on end when he heard this, like he got goosebumps, right? Someone understands, right? He said, fire. He struck the target like that. Focused, right? Now, what Patanjali says is you have to focus on that object, and within your awareness, there's nothing but that object. And it's so extreme that it's not even aware that I am looking at the object, but there's just the object, nothing else. It's a very elusive state, very challenging. And that's why when Arjuna hears about this, I don't think I can do that. All right. Your question, oh yes, so one strategy, like for instance in Ashtanga Yoga, I want to still the mind. Still is maybe not even a strong enough word. I need to anchor the mind so that it does not budge an inch. I need to enter samadhi. And the word samadhi, it means sama, means same. Di refers to meditation. So it means that we keep a sameness of mind. And one way to characterize that is this intense focus of Ashtanga Yoga. But there's other ways that one can have their mind always the same. And Krishna is going to describe that as he goes further into that chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. We read a few verses today. He begins to see that as you're moving around the world, not just in a meditative pose in a state of trance, but as you move through the world, your mind can always be absorbed in connection with God, and that can also be called samadhi. And that's the samadhi that's described at length in the Bhagavad Gita. So one way to conquer the obstacle of the mind is to still the mind. Another way is to examine with cold, stoic analysis all of one's desires in the mind. To analyze them, to see the weaknesses in them, to see the illusion in them, and to break them, to break every attachment in your mind. And this is called Jnana Yoga. Right? Bhakti Yoga has a different approach. Bhakti Yoga is, there's myself and I have my own true nature, which is blissful and which ultimately is divine love. And then there's my mind, which is programmed in a whole different way, like a computer with all different kind of programming. The two are not in harmony. But if I reprogram my mind by bringing in the right content, and I process that content by always reflecting on it and thinking about it and meditating on it, then my mind can become reprogrammed in such a way where it's in harmony with my own nature, right? So I'm not trying to still it. As a matter of fact, I'm keeping it quite active, but active within the realm that I want to keep it active in, on the spiritual content, on truth, ultimately on God. And so in this way, I harmonize the mind with the self. And when the mind and the self, we suffer so much in life because the mind is completely out of harmony with the self. Right? But when the mind and the self are in perfect harmony, then there's a union between them. Right? And what is another word for union? Yoga. Right? So that's bhakti yoga. Right? So there's different ways to approach settling the mind, or let's say overcoming the obstacle of the mind. And stilling them is Patanjali's. That's why I said overcoming the obstacle of the mind, because that leaves room for different approaches to deal with the mind. Make sense? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move forward? Yes. I'm forgetting your name for.
Hi, my name is Paul.
Yep.
Yeah, hi, my name is Paul. This might be a little technical question, but I was just wondering, what's the difference between samadhi and yoga? Or is there a difference?
You know, in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, fight this battle, but do it with detachment. Keep your mind even, whether you're victorious or whether you're defeated. Right? That's a really challenging thing to tell a warrior, right? Just, commit yourself to fight this intense battle. And whether you win or you lose, your mind is the same, right? But then he says, samatvam. There's that sama, again, like samadhi, samatvam. Samadhi means evenness of meditation. Samatvam means evenness. Even the tvam means evenness. Samatvam, sameness, evenness. Samatvam yoga uchate. Such evenness of mind is called yoga, he says. So how we use these terms and so on, yeah, they can be used in different ways. So in a way, you can say, yes, samadhi means yoga. You could say like that. But then you could say, but what do you mean by samadhi? Because Arjuna is being asked to fight a battle in samadhi, right? So it's not that. Krishna will say in the 8th chapter, he'll say, what is it? Yam yam vapi smaran. What you meditate on, smaran, what you remember in life. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. You become that. Tyajayante kalevram tam tam evaidikanteya. What is it? Sara, thank you. Sara tadbhava bhavita. That state of mind you attain, whatever you remember at the time of death. And then the next verse, he says something really interesting. Something that for Arjuna is a little unusual because he's thinking of yoga in a different way. Smaran. We use this word smaran to mean like meditation, sitting down in a yogic pose and focusing our mind, going deep, deep, deep within, shutting down the senses, going within. We think of smaran commonly like that. But he says, what is it? Next. Tasmat, therefore, right? Whatever you're meditating on at the time of death, that's what you become in your next life. Tasmat, therefore. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. Sarveshu kaleshu, all the time. Therefore, all of the time. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara. Always meditate on me. Always think of me. Mam anusmara yudyacha. And at the same time, fight. Right? So he's describing how Arjuna, even in a battle, right, the least likely place where someone can sit and peacefully meditate and control the mind, he's saying even in a war, you can be in samadhi, right? With the mind always absorbed in God, seeing God everywhere. So yes, yoga, you could say samadhi means yoga, but then what do we mean by samadhi? What do we mean by yoga? These terms can be shrunk or expanded according to what we intend to use. And they can be used correctly in both contexts.
So through yoga, you can achieve samadhi.
Through the practice of yoga, you can achieve samadhi. You could say through entering samadhi, you can achieve yoga. It's depending on how you want to use the terms.
Thank you.
Okay. We have about 7 minutes or so left. Shall we move on just a bit? I said that I was going to share 2 nature analogies, so we have 1 more to go. What was the first one? The musk deer, the Himalayan musk deer, right? It's searching externally for happiness. Well, it's searching externally for this aroma when it exists within its own body. And we are like that deer in that we're searching externally for happiness when actually our own inner nature is happiness. Okay? Are you ready for the second?
Yes.
Now, when we describe the nature of the self, the most common term used to describe it in the yoga texts is a compound phrase, you could say. Sat Chit Ananda. I believe Yogi True was speaking on this this morning. Sat Chit Ananda. 3 features. Eternal. And when we say eternal, it means we never were not existing, and there will never be a time where this is the first thing Krishna says to Arjuna, Tvevaham jatu nasam natvam ne me janadipa. Never is a time when I did not exist, Arjuna, nor you, nor all the kings on this battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. We're eternal. But we're not just eternal, meaning that there wasn't a time when we didn't exist and there never will be a time. But Sat means also changeless, right? Changeless. The self never changes. In other words, it can't be warped. It can't be. Everything that it always has and always will have. We're changeless by nature. Sat, Chit, we're conscious by nature. And that consciousness also indicates an awareness of truth. We'll get into that more maybe tomorrow. Eternal, conscious, Satchit, and Ananda. Ananda means blissful, right? By nature, blissful, right? And we'll go deeper into what that implies as well, according to the Bhakti Yogis. Now, about 5,000 years ago, there was a great soul. He was a man involved in all the worldly stuff. He was like an advisor to the king. He was actually kind of like the stepbrother to the king, the blind king Dhritarashtra. Not too far from here, pretty much in the place they call Delhi now, that was called Hastinapur. And he was very much caught up in the political world of being the advisor to the king. And one time he was giving good advice to the king about the prince, who was problematic. And the prince became so upset, he threw this person out. His name was Vidura, right? And he threw Vidura out of the kingdom. He said, throw him out. This was his own uncle that he's talking about. But this Duryodhana, the real villain of the Mahabharata, he said, throw Vidura out with nothing but his breath. Right? He gets nothing. He was so furious with him. Vidura was he was a worldly man, having to deal with all kind of worldly things, but he was also a sage. He had the wisdom of a yogi. And rather than get upset, rather than complain, rather than argue, rather than fight, he said, I'm okay. I'll use this as an opportunity. I'll see the difficult circumstances in life as an opportunity to grow. Right? So he said, I'll use this time to go on pilgrimage. You go on pilgrimage, you go to holy places like you come to Rishikesh. But you don't come just to bathe in the river. You come to meet the holy people. You come to meet the wise people. He said, that's what I'm going to do. So he started walking away from the kingdom. And he came to a place not far down the river called Haridwar. How many of you have been to Haridwar? Very important holy place. Right? He went to Haridwar. And there he met a sage named Maitreya. And he put this question, this very important question before Maitreya. Are you ready to hear his question?
Yes.
Okay. He said, if by nature we're blissful, ananda, and if by nature we're sat, we're changeless, well then why is it that we're not always feeling bliss? That's a good question, right? If we're changeless by nature, then it should say the same. And if we're blissful by nature, then we should always be feeling bliss. But we feel confused, we feel depressed, we feel bored, we feel angry. We feel all of these emotions. We go through ups and downs. We feel happy one minute and then we're sad the next. We're enjoying one minute and we're suffering severely the next. Right? We've all been there. Right? How is that so? Good question?
Yes.
Okay, Maitreya had a good answer. And again, because he was a forest sage, he used a nature analogy. And he said, we can imagine that they're right by the Ganges River because they're in Haridwar. And we can imagine it was a full moon night. And he said, if you look up at the moon, picture a full moon, right? When you look up in the sky, that moon is steady, right? It's not moving, it's not rippling, it's not like clouds, they're blowing by, and the clouds, their shape is changing all the time, but the moon stays steady, right? Big, bright, full moon shining its rays, right? The moon is steady. But if you look at the reflection of the moon on the river, on the water, the rippling water, right? And if you think that that reflection is the moon, then it appears that the moon has the nature of the water, which is moving, which is changing, which is rippling. It's like this one minute and it's like that the next. Right? 1 second, it changes, it's constantly changing. You understand? So what Maitreya was saying is, we look to the mind, we identify the mind as being the self, but the mind is not the self. The mind is made out of matter. The self is made out of spirit. So the nature of the mind is that it's always changing, and the nature of the self is that it's changeless. When we identify the mind as being the self, then we constantly go through changes. We're up 1 minute, we're down the next. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's what yoga is meant to do, right? It's meant to help us not identify with the body, not identify with the mind. We're not this body. This is what my friend Raghunath says all the time. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am something divine. Right? The body and even the mind are made out of matter, constantly fluctuating, constantly changing. The self is spiritual energy. And tomorrow when we get together, we're going to discuss in detail the distinctions. What's the difference between material energy and spiritual energy? We take this whole universe. In one sense, we can divide it into 2 categories. Right? They have scientists and they divide all of the elements of this world into, how many elements are there? Does anyone know the table that they have?
5.
5? No, much more. In other words, yeah, periodic table. Does anyone know? 130 or something? Every now and then they find a new one. But the yogi said, we can break it down, but the first thing you do is you break it into 2 categories. There's material energy, right, which they call prakriti, and then there's the spiritual energy called purusha. Tomorrow we'll talk about these 2 energies. Real fundamental, important yoga stuff. You excited?
Yes.
Please come back tomorrow. We'll go deeper into it.
And also about the people that you met who have achieved.
Oh, I didn't share that story. You're going to have to come back tomorrow if you want to hear about the people that achieve the state of awareness.
We'll do that.
Thank you all so much. Please stick around. There's going to be incredible Kirtan coming next. And all day, especially in the evening, there'll be so much to be here for. It's been a joy to be here with you. I feel very honored to be here with you, very happy to be here with you, and I look forward to seeing you more. Hari Om Tat Sat. Srila Prabhupada.